Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel Skinny on Carbs. My name is Andrea, and on this channel I try to use my background in biology, histopathology, and naturopathic medicine to help you live the life that you dream of and deserve. One day I'll get professional and get something to hold a camera, but for now I just have to use my hands. So I'm sorry if I shake. Okay, so let's get to it. Is a high carb, low fat diet complete? Well, is it? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. There's so many ways I could go with this, okay? So is it complete? It might not be complete, okay? But it depends on where you're sourcing your carbohydrates from, okay? So a high carb, low fat diet usually in the community is described as a diet that is mostly sourcing your calories from carbohydrates. So usually that looks like around 80%, right? And then the other 20% is split amongst the other macros. So I am going to approach this first and foremost. Let me just tell you, on this channel, when we talk about carbohydrates, we are talking about simple carbohydrates. That's the carbohydrate fuel type that I prefer to consume, is simple carbohydrates. Okay, so on this channel we're talking about simple carbohydrates. We are not talking about isolated nutrients, meaning I'm not talking about sucrose, I'm not talking about fructose, I'm not talking about glucose. You can get any one of those in isolation. You can get glucose syrup, you can get foods with high fructose corn syrup, and you can get table sugar that's just sucrose. I'm not talking about those. That is not food. Okay? So, um, that's not what we're talking about on this channel. There are other channels that discuss high carb, and their approach is all plant foods, right? So you can be talking about complex carbs like polysaccharides and things of that nature, starches. Okay, there's nothing wrong with those. It's just not my focus. It's not where I focus. Okay, my focus is in simple nutrition, and I have a reason for it. And I teach about it over on my Patreon, why I subscribe to simple nutrition, why I think it's superior, and why I think it gets you the results that you want, and gets you to stay there as well. Okay, so on this channel, I'm laying down some definitions here. We're talking about whole foods, and we're talking about simple sugars in the whole foods. So is a high carb diet complete when you are sourcing your simple nutrition from whole foods? Yes, it is. Okay. So, what's the biggest area of concern that people have when we're talking about high carb, low fat diets, right? So, when we're talking about high carb, low fat diets, people are concerned with the fats and the proteins, clearly. The micronutrient profile is nowhere near an issue, because this type of diet that I am promoting is extremely nutrient dense, and we are eating foods where we can actually source the nutrients easily. We're not eating foods where you have to worry about binders and lack of bioavailability. We're not discussing those types of foods. Okay, so now that we've laid a little bit of foundation and some groundwork, we can move on with what is the biggest concern when we're talking about these types of foods. Okay, so the two biggest concerns, like I said, it's going to be where do you get your protein and where do you get your fats. Now let's talk about the fats first. So with the fats, people tend to be a little bit, I would say, confused. Okay, and with the proteins too, but with the fats, people are really confused because you have a community that's out there that's telling you you have to consume all this fats, or else your hormones will suffer, right? And not only that, if you want to be slim like I am, you need to eat a lot of fats, or else you're going to be fat. Clearly I'm fat. Can you see all this fat, all that fat? I'm fat, right? So you need to eat a lot of fats, okay? Because you won't have hormones. And by the way, I'm perimenopausal. I'm just fine. I have a 4-year-old. She turned 4. I have a 4-year-old. I'm still breastfeeding my 4-year-old. You guys, I got I'm doing okay. So people get confused thinking that you need to eat fats to create your hormones. Okay, why do they think this? This is not far-fetched. The reason they think this is because your hormones are steroid based, okay? Meaning they're cholesterol based. They come from a cholesterol based system. And so the idea or the thinking is if you're not taking in exogenous cholesterols, exogenous means you're eating them via your fats, right? If you're not taking those in, then you're suffering your hormones. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Every cell in your body has the ability to make cholesterol. And like I've said in other videos, if you start taking in level 2 nutrients, right? Cholesterol is a regulated thing. Your body's regulating it. Your cells will make it as you need it. If you start to take those things in, well, you disrupt the system, okay? You throw things off. You throw off the regulation. And what people are doing is they're taking in exogenous cholesterols thinking that these are the precursors that they need to make their hormones. And that's a fallacy. That is not true, okay? All you're doing when you take in these cholesterols and you take in these fats exogenously is you stunt your metabolic pathways, okay? That is what you're doing. You're not contributing to your hormone production. You are stunting your metabolic pathways, which means you're causing harm to your endocrine system, which is the system that you need to be on point in order to create those hormones that you love and you cherish and that you need so much, right? So you don't need a ton of fats in order to create your hormones. You need adequate fats in order to form the base for your cell membranes and things of this nature. But you are not in a growth phase. You don't need an excessive amount of and another thing too is they say you need it for your brain. Well, you grew your brain when you were a baby, right? That's the most intense time when you're growing your brain. And that's when you're using up all this DHA and all these other fats in order to grow your brain. You're not growing your brain anymore, really and truly. You can grow new neurons. Yes, you can. Okay. But you're not growing a brain. Your brain is not increasing in size and your brain is not dying off and you have to replace those cells. If that's what's happening, you're going to have memory issues. You don't want your brain cells to just die off, right? So don't let people make you believe that you're turning over all these brain cells and that you need to constantly take fats in order to keep the brain turning over, those brain cells turning. That's not what's happening, or else you'd be losing your memory, okay? You grew your brain when you were a kid. You're not growing a new brain. You just need a sufficient amount of fat. And the only reason we are considered a low-fat diet, which I don't think it's low-fat at all, I think it is adequate fat. The only reason it's considered low-fat is because the average Western diet is really somewhere around 35 to 40% of calories from fat. That's almost half, 40% is almost half. You're almost you're just 10% away from the 50% mark. So that's pretty high. So of course, when you drop down to something like 10%, you think it's low, but you really don't. It's not necessary to have all that fats. You're not creating a bunch of hormones with all those fats, okay? So that's for the fats. Fats have other issues too. And I spoke about it in another video where I am discussing aldehydes and how it inhibits the mitochondria. I go into it in detail. I think the video was called things that don't go with a high carb or skinny on carb diet. If I find it, I'll link it. Okay, so you can take a look at that there, where I talk about how fats really don't work in this whole system. Okay, so that's the criticism on fat. Let's go to protein. Oh my goodness, I don't even want to talk about protein. I'm gonna get a lot of people pissed off and upset because the Western society is protein obsessed. Protein obsessed. It's crazy how much protein you think you need. Okay, you don't need all that protein. First and foremost, you actually need amino acids. Okay, you don't need protein. Protein are complex nutrition. It's complex nutrition. You make your own protein. Every animal makes their own protein. Okay, you synthesize your protein. You really don't need to take in a complex protein. What you need are free amino acids. Okay, and just so you guys know, in case you don't remember, only some of your amino acids are essential, meaning you can create the other ones from raw materials. Okay, so you can make amino acids. You don't have to constantly amino acids. You can make some, and the not the ones that are essential, meaning the ones you can't make, you take those in via amino acid or free amino acid form. You don't need to eat complex protein structures for that. So that's just one thing. The second thing is, if you are taking in adequate nutrition, adequate calories, and you are taking in your calories at the right time, and you are your body is going to instigate a proper reduce, reuse, and recycle system that we like to call autophagy, right? So, and that your body does this with fats as well. Your body has a very good way of taking and breaking down protein, useless protein, proteins that are misfolded, proteins that aren't working, proteins that need to take a break. It has a very good way of taking these proteins, chopping them up, chomp, 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 and recycling the amino acids to be used to synthesize other proteins that you need. Okay, so you don't need as much protein as you think you do. All right, it is not necessary. When you take in too much protein, which most people are doing, they are instigating a growth cycle, they are instigating mTOR, they are causing their cell turnover to quicken and hasten, which is not a good idea unless you are a bodybuilder and you are trying to build massive amounts of muscle. This is not necessary. You don't need to do this, okay? It is not a good idea. All you're doing is you are burdening the kidneys and your liver because there is no protein reservoir in the body. Okay, there's no protein storage in the body. Your body doesn't store proteins. It can reuse proteins, but it does not have a storage program for proteins. You have a storage program for sugar, okay, and you can store energy in the form of glycogen and fat. You don't have one for protein. So that means that your body has to get rid of those amino acids, and it also has to get rid of the nitrogenous waste that is produced from these amino acids. The system that does this is your kidneys, okay? Your liver, obviously, and then your kidneys. You are burdening your liver and your kidneys with all this nitrogenous waste, okay? You don't need as much protein as you think you do. You need an appropriate level of protein. So you are not under proteined and you're not under fat if you are eating a high carb, low fat diet. Okay? I would be much more concerned with where am I getting my micronutrients? Am I eating foods that are easily digestible? Am I eating foods with bioavailable nutrients? Am I meeting my energetic needs throughout the day? Am I timing my meals properly? Am I eating at the right time? Am I not creating stress in the body with the foods I am eating? And also, am I not instigating stress in the body by not eating at the right times and creating cortisol spikes? These are the things that I will probably think of more than, am I eating enough protein or am I eating enough fat? Okay? Every single whole plant food has carbs, proteins, and fats. You don't have to be, and it has it in the perfect ratio, okay? It comes usually high carbohydrates, a low amount of protein, low amount of fats, okay? Usually. That's usually how it goes, unless you're talking about nuts and seeds. And in that way, it's inverse. Now you're talking about high fats, okay? So, once again, you can get all the macros via the plants. Every single plant has amino acids. It has fats. It has carbs. You don't have to be worried that you're not meeting some high protein need. It's not necessary. Okay? Now, if you're a bodybuilder, things might be different. But for the normal average person out here, you don't need all that protein. I'm just saying. All right, you guys, I hope you guys found something useful in this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and share it with somebody that you think needs to hear this. Okay, bye, you guys.